The signs of the times, looking at the future from a biblical perspective. Well, the Bible speaks a lot about the future and gives us a lot of signs of the times that we understand what time it is on the clock of God in the history of the world. Episode number 4, 3 questions. Jesus has spoken a lot about the future, about the signs of the times. He does it in Matthew 24 and in other passages in the Gospels, but especially in Matthew 24, he sums up quite a lot of signs of the times. He is speaking to his disciples on the Mount of Olives. And then you read in chapter 24, verse 3, as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So they have 3 questions. When will this happen? Second question, what will be the sign of your coming? Third question, what will be the sign of the end of the age? Question number 1, when will this happen? Just before this, Jesus has spoken about the destruction of Jerusalem and of the temple. That there would not be left a stone upon another. It would be totally destroyed. That must have come as a great shock for his friends, because they were waiting for the coming of the beautiful kingdom. They were convinced that he was the king of Israel, the king of the world even, and that Jerusalem would be the center of the world, and that the temple would be the center of the world. And then he says it will totally be destroyed. When will this happen? It happened 40 years later. Jesus lived and died and rose from the dead around the year 30. 40 years later, in the year 70, the Roman legions came, led by Titus, and they took the city, murdered over 1 million Jews, according to the Jewish historian of the time, Josephus Flavius. Over 1 million murdered, and so 40 years later, it happened. That was question number 1. When will it happen? 1 generation later, 40 years. Second question, what will be the sign of your coming? So at this moment, the disciples understand that his coming will not yet lead to that beautiful future of peace and righteousness on earth and of him being the king, but all the prophets in the Bible speak about it. So they're absolutely convinced that one day it will come. So right now they start to understand somehow he must come again. He must come a second time to bring in that beautiful kingdom of peace on earth. But when? And how do we know? What is the sign of your coming? So Jesus expects us to understand the signs of the times, but they ask, help us a little bit with that. What is the sign of your coming in glory? That we know now he's coming very soon. And then Jesus says, now you sit down and I'll explain. And then what follows in Matthew 24 are all these signs. He speaks about wars and rumors of wars. Nation will rise against nation. Kingdom, famines and earthquakes in various places. The beginning of the birth pains. You will be handed over for persecution, put to death. You will be hated by all nations because of me. Many will turn away, fall away from the faith. It will run through the families. So he says, what will be the sign of your coming? Watch all these signs. And these signs, these general signs, have been with us for the last 2,000 years. Although in our days, the statistics of these signs are steeply on the rise. There have always been wars, but we just left an age with even 2 world wars, with more casualties than in all the previous wars, in all the previous centuries even combined. So the statistics are on the rise, the same with the earthquakes, the same with all these other general signs that he mentioned. So it's coming to a climax. It's increasing, it's intensifying. It's almost like time is in a pressure cooker. It happens quicker and quicker and quicker and more violent. But he mentions 2 positive signs. How do we know, they say, that you are now about to come in glory? All these general signs are with us, but have been with us for 2,000 years. But 2 signs are specifically being fulfilled in our days. One is, he says, the gospel of the kingdom, of that beautiful kingdom that will come, will be preached around the world as a testimony to all nations. And then that will bring an end to this part of world history. They asked, what will be the sign of the end of the age? So they're not asking about the end of the world, because the world will continue. But this terrible age with all these terrible things, when is it coming to an end? When will you come in glory? When will the next phase of world history begin? So he says, when you see that the gospel of the kingdom is being preached around the globe, and it's happening today, satellites, internet, hundreds of hours every day, wherever I travel in the world, I can open up my laptop and find all kinds of messages about Jesus with all the languages of the world. He doesn't say that every individual will hear it first, but all the nations, all the language groups will be able to tap into it. And that will bring an end to this part of world history. And the second positive sign that he mentions is watch the fig tree. And the fig tree is one of the pictures in the Bible referring to Israel. He says, when you see the fig tree, it seems to be a dead tree, like the Jews scattered in the whole world. Nobody cared, they were persecuted, killed, and suddenly, and we see it happening with our own eyes, they start to come back to the promised land of Israel. He says, when you see the fig tree come back to life, getting new green leaves, returning to the land, then you must understand that the kingdom of God, that beautiful kingdom, is right at hand. It is before the door.
Alpha